AI has gotten to the point where it can recursively improve itself.
Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where I talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. I am excited to have with us. He is now a global speaker. He is former Amazon exec. He is the founder and CEO of Stellus AI, which, why is that important? Artificial intelligence platform. You may have heard of this AI thing, folks. Hey, for listening. I'm being, of course, sarcastic when I make this comment. Trent, we were fortunate enough to have Trent speak at the 40 Strategy Growth Workshop we had in November of 2025. We'd love to have him again. We've been trying to work together on collaborating with teams and accelerating AI to get people in small business involved with this. Trent, I'm really excited to have you here. I believe it's your third time on the Measure Success podcast. Welcome.
All right. Thank you for having me again. I am so excited to be here and love just working with you and your organization on this stuff.
This is an exciting time. And your blog is one of there's only a few blogs I read, because there's limited time, right? And it's kind of funny. There's a blog that's be coming out here in February where I'm talking about if I answered everybody. There were 600 invitations I had just recently to like accept or sort through on LinkedIn, and the reality was if I accepted everybody's invitation to meet for 15 minutes, it'd be the equivalent of like 150 hours,
Oh,
right?
it's a lot.
That's a lot, right? And just being really conservative and saying I could bill out $500 an hour, um, that's $75,000 cost right there, right? Of lost
hmm
revenue opportunity. And then if I met with all 20,000 of my connections for 15 minutes, that'd be 2.5 years, right? That's millions of dollars, like literally. So it's impossible for us to meet with me. But one of the reasons you and I are so passionate about is we're trying to get out and speak because the message you in particular are talking about, we don't have enough time. Like we're trying to get and reach out because trying to stay as close to the spearhead of AI change to help save our small business and more importantly, help excel our small business has never gotten more important. And I think it will continuously get more important. Why don't you highlight, if you don't mind, summarize some of the most recent trends of your kind of, I'll call it your wow moments of how you're seeing things happen that maybe even a year ago you didn't expect to see.
hmm And, it's been so on my mind the last week or two. I actually started writing my newsletter for this week. I didn't send it. I don't know if you've noticed that. You haven't received one from me because I first started going into kind of this huge kind of almost negative direction.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason is there's been so much change the last 2 weeks. I was sitting here trying to think like, how do I express to leaders how big of a change there has been?
Yeah.
Because even though I go out and I speak with leaders every single day, right? And I go to big groups and keynotes and workshops from enterprises to small companies, I really don't think most executives understand what is truly happening with AI right at the leading edge. And just the last 2 weeks, there's been so many things that have happened specifically around Claude, what is it has been able to do. We had the thing with Moltbook and all the stuff that happened with automated agents. We've got just agents coming out everywhere. And frankly, business leaders are not prepared of what this means. Okay. And so I'm trying to figure out how to deal with this in a way that is like useful to leaders without being too theoretical, bringing it, down to what they need to know today to use it in their businesses. And it's hard for me to figure out. So you'll get a newsletter sometime in the next couple days, maybe this weekend, where I'm going to try and go into this. But the key thing that's happening that leaders need to understand right now is AI has gotten to the point where it can recursively improve itself. Okay. And this is the thing I've been looking for the last 2, 3 years. I actually wrote a white paper on this 3 years ago about what I would expect to have happen here. And that moment has come.
Yeah.
This is really that watershed moment, I think, because what this means is that AIs are now able to improve themselves.
Yeah.
They can write code to improve themselves. And when you start to do that at machine speed, everything changes, right? Everything gets faster, new products, new services, more competition. just so many new things are going to be appearing now. And just recently, like what we saw was there was a whole new version of Claude that came out for the software development platform. Literally 20 minutes after OpenAI came out with theirs and gave it out. Okay. And we come to find out that guess what? It's not humans programming these anymore. They're being almost entirely developed by AIs themselves. Okay. The there's a new function within Claude Code. It's a co-working function. We're able to give Claude tasks to go and start doing on your behalf. That was written almost entirely by AI. Okay. This is the world that we're now into, and it's just going to be a huge change to businesses.
Mhm. Okay, so the question for so many business leaders, right, is they it was so interesting. I'm going back to once again I previously recorded, and folks, once again, if you're listening to this, forgive us, right? We do, today is a 4 podcast recording day, right? And so, and obviously we spend them out once a week. So if you're listening to this thing of Trent, it's a little stale already, right? Because it wasn't released today, at this moment of what's taking place. And it was Trey Taylor, who you've met, connected with, one of our friends of the podcast, a friend like you, Trent, and he was talking about how somebody was speaking, get paid a lot of money, and they were talking about prompts. And folks, prompts is so 2025 or
Oh yeah.
2024, you can make an argument, right?
Oh,
You know,
absolutely. And there's still a lot of people talking about, hey, we need to learn to prompt. Guess what? That's no longer needed. Okay.
so
Yeah,
okay,
it'll do it.
so okay, for those who are the neophytes, if you may, or people who are the early stage, and there are of course people who are listening to this podcast and they're not as fully developed as you are. Um, Help people understand the difference between the original, I'm just doing a query within ChatGPT, a prompt, and now what's happening next? Like what is these agents, et cetera? What does that mean for a business owner? And why is this maturation and the democratization of AI? Why is this important?
Yeah. All right. So let me explain what this is first to kind of ground everybody. Now, when ChatGPT came out, everybody was like, hey, this is a great thing. I can talk to it, I can chat with it, and maybe use it to write an email better. Right. And a lot of people still kind of think that way, especially if you haven't really been that engaged with it over the last years. It's really started to improve. Right. But it has become way, way more. Now, the way that I express this is that there's really two aspects to the AI tools today. On one hand is that augmentation capability, right? And that's where we started with ChatGPT. It makes you better at whatever you're trying to do based off of all the knowledge it has, everything it can learn about you, your organization. It just up levels you, right? That's for executives, that's for your employees. Just makes them better at what they're doing when they learn how to communicate and use it the right way. And that's awesome. Certainly a big value add. The big difference we've got right now is with agents. Okay? And most people don't understand these. And so, what agents are is when AI can logically complete tasks on its own, so autonomously or semi autonomously with human input and oversight. Okay? And so, as an example, actually, I'll tell you what I literally just did right before this. Everybody asks me where my book is. I haven't written a book yet. Okay. I need to write one. I've got all this information that I've generated over the years. And so over about the last hour, I asked Claude to go through my entire file structure, look for documents that I'd written, and propose to me my outline for a book. It went and did it in about 10 minutes. It came back after having gone through everything that I've written and put together or spoken on and said, here's the book you need to write right now, and here's the outline for it. Do you want me to start writing it? Okay. Doing that so fast, compiling information, understanding it logically, and then being able to take it to the next step. And I probably could have the book written by tomorrow if I just told Claude yes. Okay. And this isn't going to be like a crappy book either. It's
Right.
fully synthesized. Okay. And so AI agents are now available in any tool. I shouldn't say any. They're in ChatGPT. There's a built-in agent that you can spin up to do things. I typically demo that I can have it log into my CRM system and do things on my behalf. There's a whole bunch of things that I do with that agent capability. All of your employees now have access to it in ChatGPT. There's equivalent functionality in Claude and some of these others. It does not exist in Copilot, by the way,
Mm.
but everybody's beginning to have access to these agents where they can do things for you in an effective and logical way. And this really changes how business and work is going to occur. But I'll pause there for you.
First of all, that's powerful. And it's really interesting. Early on, we had one of the co-found the one of the sorry, not the co-founders, but we had a gentleman who was he's one of the co-founders of the Paul Allen Institute for AI Incubation. This is before ChatGPT came out. It was like right when ChatGPT came out, and he made this really interesting comment. He said, Carl, I don't even read books anymore because they're not current enough. But what you just described is super powerful. It's taking your most recent articles, your most recent information, your presentation, your speeches, discerning it, recommending it took all of 10 minutes, you said.
10 minutes.
And now you could release it. And this is the power. You now have a book that is current.
Mhm.
Now, it won't be current for long, as we know,
Right.
but it's current, right? It's current. And so you can release it with confidence, right? Behind what's taking place. But partly what he was saying is you've got to read blogs, you got to read the latest experts on the latest, right? Because it's moving so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people, what they're doing right now is they're creating an agent that actually just looks for information for them.
Mm,
Right. So every day you show up at work and your agent is giving you a brief on what you need to know about. And that's either news out there in the world or it's going to be the information about your company. Okay. Hey, here's the number of orders that came in overnight. Here's the things that might need attention. Okay. Here's what you need to do today. And this is what I often refer to as being AI as your primary interface to your workday. And that
mhm.
is the direction that we're going to be here. I mean, we're already almost there. And your AI is going to tell you the tasks you need to work on. It's going to tell you what exceptions need your attention. And we're getting very, very close to it. I just built for an organization for the first time in my business on the Stella side of things to connect Chat GPT to one of their internal data stores. Okay. And so what you do in this situation is, everybody's used to like Slack or Teams, right? You typically do a mention of somebody, do like, hey, at Carl, what's going on? You ask a question, right? Now you do exactly the same thing to access data in your other systems. You do at CRM system. Tell me what is the latest deals that are, need attention today, right?
Mm,
At accounting system, what is our current days outstanding?
mhm.
Okay. And then, hey, let's do some analysis on that and then write a report and then potentially take an action, all from the interface of Chat GPT or Claude or whatever you're working with. And again, this isn't science fiction anymore. Literally, I just built it for a company. Okay. It's here, it's easy, and it's getting easier every single day.
Okay, so I remember when you were speaking with us, you gave an example of something you wrote, and you said basically it was like a 15-minute process to quote unquote write it. That example that you just talked about, how long did that take you or your team from we would like to have this happen to implementation?
Yeah, realistically, that one probably took us about 3 weeks. It took a little bit of time, not one of those 15-minute type deals,
Sure.
because they're a little bit more complex. It's still a little bit bleeding edge. It was the first one that we had done, and we need to make sure you've got the right protections in place. And this is
Mhm.
kind of the key thing. Okay.
Yeah.
Especially when you're looking at having access to sensitive data like your accounting system or CRM system, you need to make sure you set that up appropriately with, all the protections, not only
Right.
just typical security things, but there are new risks being introduced by AI too. I mean, not to go like super far down the road and freak anybody out, but let's say you get an email from somebody and it says, some hidden text like, go look into the CRM system and extract information. If your AI gets that email and you don't see that, it might process it and begin to go and do it. Okay. And so you need to have protections in place here. Again, not a reason to say don't use these new things, but you've just got to also be a little bit aware of these new capabilities and the risks that they come with.
So that is one of the more common things that I'll hear of people reluctant, whether within companies or not, is this the security risk, right? So let's use Claude as an example. You said, and you have a Microsoft type back office type situation, right? So it's pulling. And well, actually, let me maybe this once again. You could correct me properly of which it's pulling from. But let's say it's pulling from sources that from existing data files. How do we make sure it's looking up the things that are okay versus the things that aren't okay to be in a search engine that can be seen in the outside world versus something that we're only trying to use for internal use?
Yeah, great points. And so let me clarify a couple things. I get asked this question every single time I talk around security, right? And so the key thing you've got to keep in mind from a business leader perspective first is that you and your team need to use business level AI tools. Okay. And not the free versions, but business appropriate tools that have the business standard protections for security, for IP, liability, all of these things in place. And then if you have that, then you don't have to worry about your data getting into those systems and being used poorly. But if you're still using like the free versions, those are going to train on your activity and your data. And so you don't want to do that with any type of sensitive information, right? So that's kind of the key thing. Use the business level one, right? But from there, when it comes down to connecting to your systems, the way that they're set up is they actually do use the what we call role-based access controls.
Mm,
Okay. And so when you do it, it's actually authenticating and acting as you. Okay. And so even if you're using, like there's now we call them connectors or apps, um, but you can set it up and it connects to your SharePoint, but it does it under your credentials.
mm,
And
mhm.
so again, anything you have access to, it's going to have access to. Now, certainly organizations are finding some problems because with SharePoint especially, nobody has good security there. And so it's finding access to information that maybe people thought was just hidden, obscurity or security through obscurity. So you do have to be attentive to those things, but generally they're working as the person that they log in with.
Okay. So that's good. Right? That's a helpful point, right? You described there. So you have, but let's say, for example, you're the CEO of a business or the business owner. You have access to everything, right? So you have literally access to all the different files. And forgive the dumb question here. So I'm meaning this in a sincere way, though. How do we make sure that once again, what I call the outside? Because I'm gonna ask two different questions here with intent. There's one side I recognize from the marketing perspective of I'm trying to get as much information as I can out there about what we do to share intently from a marketing perspective so we can be found. Like I want my book, I want my content, I want my blog, I want it to be out there to be read by the LLMs so people can search and find me from a content perspective. So that's like one thing, right? With intent, I want to open those files. But then there's like client related information that I can't have be seen. So how do we bifurcate those two things to help make sure we're maintaining that fine and important line between the two?
Yeah, well, anything that you do through that business level account is never going to show up on the internet or be incorporated into an AI. Just full stop if you're using a business level account. So you don't have to worry about, your information potentially making it up somewhere. Okay? That's the way that it should work, and the standard protections are in place through the larger organizations, right? So in order to make yourself visible with an AI, this is a huge, huge issue. And maybe to talk about that briefly here. Right now, very few organizations are visible to AI. But at the same time, 90% of B2B buyers are now using generative AI tools as part of the purchasing process. Okay.
Mhm.
58% of individuals are using generative AI tools as part of their search process.
It's that high
But
now.
almost,
That's interesting. So
what,
that high.
yeah,
Wow.
it's very high, right?
Yep.
And the problem is that most businesses have no visibility to AI. Okay.
Mm.
And so there's a tool out there. One of our partners, we call it is it's Gumshoe. I really recommend the product. They'll give a free report on your business, and they will tell you what the visibility is to your business and products and services by all of the common AI models. And when we've done this for our clients, typically it's somewhere like a 5 to 10% visibility, which
Mm,
is nothing. Okay. And so what you need to do is go and look at this for your business and figure out, do you even show if somebody asks about whatever service it is that you've got?
yep.
And most of the time, you don't. Okay. So, a very important thing businesses need to start to go and work on is how to become visible. Now, run that report to give you some information. And that product, they actually have some services to help you become visible. But
Mhm.
ultimately, it is put more content out there on your website to attract that attention from AI.
Right. No, that's awesome. Once again, I hope people are once again are taking notes. This is one of those. These are one of those podcasts you want to be following and taking notes and learning from, right? Because of once again the dramatic change, right, that we're seeing here, and we have to go in towards this. So, one of the concepts you talked about when you're speaking at our conferences is and you kind of alluded to, you just didn't say explicitly, is AI is your operating system. You kind of talked about this a lot. And you gave an example of that as you're doing at your CRM, so to speak, right? You know what I mean? Or at your accounting system to like look at something where it's pulling from their information from. How is that going to continue to evolve looking forward?
Mhm. Yeah, well, what's happening right now is the AI agents are going to be doing all of the routine tasks. Okay. And so, one of the easiest to understand examples I give audiences, and we are actually working on right now, is how to reinvent sales.
Mm,
And so, let me just describe what the new sales process looks like, I think, and then we'll talk about how this turns into your operating system. Okay. And so, if you think about a traditional sales process we've been doing forever, we think about human based stages like, I need to go and have a contract negotiation, or we're in, lead development, whatever your stages are. These are typically bound by humans. Okay. The new way of doing it is to look at signals. Okay. But we've never been able to do this because humans can't look at so many signals. We just don't have the ability to do it, but AI can. And so, what I mean by this is, who has intent to buy your product? Do you
mm,
have, maybe you've got a certain number of uh, type of people that you look at, and maybe one signal is they change jobs. Okay. So you now need to be looking at all of the type of person, your buyer, and anytime you see that they change jobs, that's a signal, and that needs to go to your AI. Okay. And then your AI then qualifies it, knowing if they're a good fit for your organization or not. Right. And then they'll go and do research on whoever that lead or prospect is. And then they will take all this, put it together into a customized sales strategy so that now the human gets involved and they have a pre qualified lead based off of an immediate signal that happens somewhere out in the world that says this is a high intent buyer.
mm,
Okay. And so there's an entire shift in how you do sales now, right? Because you've now got the ability to leverage AI at some high scale you've never been able to do with people. And so when I now to bring it back to your point about the operating system, your operating system is now to define, manage, and supervise agents.
mhm,
And so you look at your sales process and you say, right now, my biggest challenge in my sales process is X. Okay. What's the best agent that I can start to build, configure to solve that problem? Okay. And then you continue to expand, and all of a sudden you've got 5, 10 different AI agents supporting the sales process, and they become the operating system for how you do sales. And
mhm.
your job is to not just deal with the human stuff that comes out of it, but to manage it. And that's what our jobs look like in the future. IBM actually just had an article that was publicized, I think, yesterday, maybe 2 days ago. And they said that they're now actually increasing the number of entry level hires by 3 times this year, which surprised everybody because all we're hearing is, oh, people are cutting out entry level jobs, right? But they said there's a difference. They're hiring people to manage AI agents.
Uh,
Okay. This is the direction that we're going right now. And so you've got to think about this from a business perspective like, well, are you still using AI to write an email? Or are you beginning to move into what this new agent world is and how that works with your organization and your employees?
Trent, you probably remember, you said this back in November. You said this exact thing that the trend of where it's going. Pre-agent, agent, agent to agent, agents hiring people to manage the
Yeah.
agents.
Mhm.
And literally, that's probably what's happened in this particular case. They're probably screening people through AI, maybe, maybe not, right? To get these screened candidates, entry level candidates. But that's a super fascinating thing. That's very much against the trend, as you said, of not where there's so much layoffs happening and at least pronounced layoffs in different companies. But they recognize this future is the managing and the agents right side.
Mhm.
I'm going to pick on this, may be unfair. Sorry, American Airlines. I gotta, maybe you guys will you could get mad at me. Go ahead. We fly a fair amount. Most of the time these days we fly Alaska. We don't fly Southwest as much as we used to. But from time to time we have to fly American. We had our bags lost. Uh, but it was interesting because we had American to Alaska transition because they're part of this global alliance, right?
Yeah.
With Alaska, I was able to get there was a course tracking system. You could look things up. But in American, there was no way to get to a human to talk with to resolve a pretty frustrating issue of that our baggage hadn't arrived yet. But in Alaska, there was. There was still a human at the end of the day that if we needed to talk with, hey, I don't see it anywhere in the system or bags, right? It's somewhere in DCA, is in Washington, DC, coming from Pensacola, it should be going to Portland, Oregon. We can't find it. So there's still this gap, right? What that is describing there is obviously we're still in early stages of democratization of AI and information, but obviously AI has been here long ago, as you know, working with Amazon. Yeah, I mean, it was available within the large companies to be able to use things. So what does that mean? That trend of okay, people are managing AI and it's actually lower level. So I guess kind of good news, there's hope for people who are
A little bit.
worried about, young kids aren't going to be able to get jobs, right? Coming out of school. Um, but what type of skill sets are going to be valuable for managing agents?
Mhm. It's a really great question. I think the second part of that I'll address too is what does your organization need to look like?
Mhm.
And so, from a skill set perspective, the way that I think about it is you need employees who can innovate. Okay? And that means that they understand what's happening, they can understand looking at data, and they can identify ways to improve things, and then they can responsibly improve it. I think that's really the core skill set. When I talk about this in my keynote, what I say is the core skill set in the future is to think and innovate with AI.
Mhm.
Everybody needs to have that, and we need to develop that in our people now, and leaders need that now. Uh, so the second step, though, is you need an organization that can do the same thing. And that's again where most organizational leaders haven't even really thought about yet, because what does that look like when you've got a lot of people who are thinking and innovating with AI? I was just about a week ago, we did a very large executive training with a global organization, their top leaders. And I was meeting with the CIO yesterday, and she said, "Well, Trent, how do we actually do this? Right? We've got 40,000 people in our company. How can we actually have the right governance in place to let people go and do this innovation?" Right? And that's really a big question right now. I mean, I can think about how to do some of this in bits and pieces in a small scale, but what does it really mean if you've got a huge organization? Right? This is a wholly new way of thinking. And I think fortunately I'm in a place where I can draw my Amazon experience, because at Amazon, it does empower everybody to innovate. It's very decentralized. And so I think there's some models there we can borrow from, and I do borrow from. But most organizations aren't built that way. Right? I had a small business leader I talked to a little while ago, and we're talking about this for her organization. And she said, "Trent, actually, most of my employees don't want to innovate." Okay? She said they want to show up to work and do their operational task and then go home. Right? And certainly there's a role for that. But in the future, what does that look like? Right? When operational tasks are being done by AI agents, right? We're going to need employees that are willing and able to innovate. And so there's certainly a big change component here to look at this for your organization.
What's fascinating about this concept, the innovation, is, I mean, from my years of being in traditional business, right? Um, I would say it's always been one of the most challenging concepts to find and create is innovation, right? It requires people willing to take risk. It requires what that means is that you're not going to be right. One of the things that Google has done really well in its old Google X Labs, right, was they rewarded people when they only had a 10x return when they needed a 100x return off an investment. And they said, thank you for helping us to understand this is not big enough for us to
Mhm,
invest in, right? We need this to be
mhm,
bigger for us to go all in with this. And so they literally rewarded the participants. Now it's funny for smaller companies that was may have been a wonderful technology and tool to use, but it's not okay for somebody the size of Google, right?
yeah.
Who wanted to use that technology. So in maybe we'll just call it smaller business, right? What are some ways we can encourage, leverage, reward this process of experimentation that's necessary, right, to help drive change?
Mhm. Well, great question. So part of my methodology I bring to organizations and the stage and whatnot is the AI sprint. You've certainly heard about that from the stuff that we've done. But there's really four key things that you need to do. And what that is you need to make AI use safe first, normal, expected, and then rewarded. That's what transforms your company. And you do need to go in that order because, from a safety perspective, you need to protect your company from the data, right? Systems and brand and everything. And you need to make sure that employees feel safe to use these tools for their job. You're not going to get adoption if people are scared to use these tools. So you've got to start with safe and then you move through the progression there. But ultimately, you train people, you set the expectation that they need to actually learn and experiment, and it's safe to fail, to your point, right?
Good.
And then you reward the right behavior. Okay. It doesn't even have to be a lot. I often say a $20 Amazon gift card is enough to be able to reward behavior. Okay. And when you get those four things in place, people have that expectation. They know they need to do it, and there's some reward. It does start to happen. And then you do that in a sprint basis. And to cover that briefly here, what I mean by that is you can't transform your company in 1 month, right? These are long term changes, but you can make progress every single month.
Mhm.
And so I call that continual progress a sprint. And it's really easy to set up in an organization. I've got an email template. And what you do, the most easiest way is to tell your employees every month, the first of the month, send you an email that says, what did they do at the AI last month? What did they learn? What did they share? Because sharing is super important here. People only learn when they see successful experiments. And then what are they going to do in the next month to learn AI? Okay. Takes 5 minutes. Ask your employees to do this. You get the documentation. And then at the end of the month, you follow up and say, did you do it? What did you learn? How did you share it? And you start to build that rhythm in, and all of a sudden your organization starts moving faster.
How simple, first of all. I love it how that it doesn't take much work. This is probably the dust statement here. It's okay, but how then it's pretty easy to take all those responses, right? Pull them together and see the collective changes that have been happening with the organization, right? Fair enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I recommend when you get a little bit more mature is you actually should track those, and then you should actually have a goal around it. How many people did an AI sprint? What was the outcome? And then write it up.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's
Love,
all the things we learned in the last month. CC your AI sprint mailbox.
yeah. Love that. That's folks, I hope you once again, if you are listening to this driving, record it again, get the download from us and get the transcript. But these are practical, effective tips, once again, to apply AI. I'm going to, we're getting near, I can't believe when I talk with you, I could talk with you all day long, Trent. Um, One of the things I do want you to talk about on your website in Stellus AI is you have a tool to understand your current readiness, if you may, or AI, where you are. And once again, I want to say this for everyone who's listening. We are daily active regular users of AI. So when I'm making this comment, I'm not saying it out of, we're okay. You know, we're pretty effective. I mean, I used ChatGPT in this example to pull the bio of Trent. I had, you know, 4 consecutive ones. Like in the old days, Trent, I would have, um, somebody prepare a bunch of work and questions for me to ask you. Now
Right.
in 2 seconds, and matter of fact, it found you already on my queries. It just pulled you back up again, super easy, right? Like, this is an example of, like, how wonderful, great example of something that's simple. I don't have to pay it for anymore. It's great. And once again, there's just one small thing of many, many, many things, you know, once again, that we do out there in the world. But let's go to the butt here. Um, we failed miserably at your test. We were a horrible score. We got this terrible score, and I recognized, wow, we've got so far to go, right? You know, in terms of AI and development and the culture behind this. So, can you share with people about that a little bit more and why they need to come to your website to get an understanding of where they're at?
Yeah, for sure. So, what I've been focusing on since leaving Amazon is how to help small and other businesses figure out how to transform effectively. It's so hard to have good advice on this right now with everything going on in the world and so much with AI. And so, what I put together is all of my best practices that we've established. We continue to learn as we do, work with businesses. And I built a tool that allows you to assess yourself against them. Okay. That's what that tool is. It's kind of a readiness or strategy assessment. And then I have it give you a 90-day action plan for how you can improve. Okay. Literally, it's something that you'd go and pay, a consultant $50,000, $100,000 to do for you. You can do in 5 minutes. I just give you the results, right? If you work with us, great, but just take it forward, and it helps you understand the different parts of your organization to begin to apply it to so you can get the benefit of it. It's just, you've got to move a lot more from just AI is for writing emails. It's way more than that now.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You know, it is far more important. There's so much we can do with it. And it is exactly. It's not just for running emails. It's not just doing research on something. It is a once again, it's becoming part of your should be part of your operating system. And so Trent, this has been I can't believe once again we're at we have to end. We have to end because of time constraints, and you got to have a good weekend coming up here. Um, Trent, just perhaps one more other piece of information. If obviously we recommend your newsletter, go to your website, take a look at that, do that list. I will say this just as a plug. I know you have other groups that are doing this, but whether you reach out to us here at 40strategy.com and you inquire of our that, but we're trying to put together our cohort that's aligned with Stellus AI, basically a cohort of about 30 to 40 business owners or participants that don't have to be business owners. So if you're interested in that, I just want to encourage you to reach out to either one of us. We're trying to get this off the running. Why? Um, we want you to learn the tips, tricks, techniques of how to start using AI for your business if you aren't already, and to stay on the spearhead that's moving faster and faster and is drifting further and further away. Like we could barely see it anymore on the horizon, how fast is moving ahead of us, but to be a part of this. And so I encourage people to do that. Maybe just one last tip or trick, or maybe perhaps interesting thing you could kind of leave us with here, Trent, before we end off for the day.
What I learned at Amazon is to figure out how to be successful in the future. You focus on your future customer. Yeah. And I think it's really useful for business leaders to do this right now because your future customers are going to expect AI services from you. And I go through this exercise with a lot of businesses, but ultimately, what it is you just need to imagine. I typically say 5 years down the road, maybe it's even faster with AI now. But what are those services that people are going to expect from your business in this new AI world? Because you need to be building them now. If you're not, somebody else is. Okay. So build for your future customer, and it will give you that vision and future success for your organization.
Trent, great stuff as always. It is a sincere pleasure. Once again, I know we've shared some of the things, but if people want to reach out, get connected, and learn more about what you're doing, where should they go?
You can go to stellus.ai for the company or on my keynotes, executive education, and other things. It's under trentgillespie.live.
Trent, thank you so much, my friend, for being on the podcast.
Happy to be here. See you soon, Carl.
You bet. Everyone who's listening, you really do truly need to go out, check out Salus.ai. They have Trent is one of the leading experts. And what I really want to help you to know, there's a lot of different experts out there, but Trent's passion is to help out small business and to help them survive and thrive in this rapidly changing environment. So I encourage you to learn more. He's doing at a minimum. Make sure you get on the blog newsletter that he has on a consistent basis. And thank you once again, Trent, for being on the show, and everyone else who's listening. Wishing you the very best in measuring your success, and that includes your AI. With that, have a great day.